going on Elevate? Hey, we have been in this series called Stretch, where we've been talking about what it means to stretch our faith. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about how you can grow and strengthen your faith by stretching it. And sometimes that's just really hard. When we decide to grow our muscles, whether we're talking physical muscles or spiritual muscles, we all start with these big commitments and these great intentions, but here's the truth. At some point, you and I experience setbacks, right? The commitment that you made will feel less exciting or urgent or interesting than it did in the beginning. Maybe you'll forget to practice the new habit that you started. Maybe in the beginning you committed to reading your Bible every day, but you don't. You miss a day, and then it turns into 2, it turns into 3. Or maybe you made it a habit to pray consistently, but then you realize, oh my gosh, it's been weeks since I've sat down and just had a conversation with God. Or maybe you're doing a good job of loving others, and then one day you just snap on somebody. And when we fail, we often feel defeated, ashamed. We can even feel hopeless. And today, I want to challenge you to think about failure differently. What if failure isn't something to fear or be ashamed of? What if failure can actually help our faith grow? What if failure isn't just, what if failure is just part of the stretch? Now I want to ask you guys, how many of you like brain bender, like brain puzzles? I do. This is one of my favorites. I don't even think it has a name, but basically there's these magnetic tiles that can go together in different configurations, and there's all these different shaped pieces that go on these magnet tiles, and you have to figure out how to put it all together in the right order, in the right way. And there's puzzles all the way from starter and beginner to wizard. And usually it takes a lot of trial and error to figure out how to solve it, especially with the wizard level puzzles. You try, you fail, then you try again. The easier puzzles, obviously, I can solve correctly on the first try. But the more difficult ones take a lot of patience to learn how to solve. If I figure it out at all, honestly, and when I can't figure it out, sometimes I'll take a break or I'll turn the puzzle to change my perspective and maybe see it from a different view. Paul, one of the most influential leaders in the history of the church, and the guy whose letter to the Romans is the one that we've been reading, he also understood failure well. And here's what we read in Romans chapter 7, verse 15, and then we'll jump to verse 19. It says, I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. And then verse 19, he says, I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. Even Paul, the great church leader and super Christian, said that he struggled. He didn't understand why he did what he did. He wanted to do the right thing, but he couldn't seem to do it. He couldn't get it right. He often did things he hated, and he couldn't stop. He was always at war between good and evil. And he sometimes felt hopeless. But he trusted that God would always rescue him. Now, Paul also wrote another letter to the church in Corinth. And he wrote this letter to a group of Christians there, and he spoke about this specific struggle that he had that caused him to struggle in his life. And here's what we read in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 8 through 10. He says about this struggle, he says, 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That is why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Not only did Paul fail when it came to sin, but there were also times when Paul felt overwhelmed, weak, and powerless. But rather than being frustrated or angry about his weaknesses, Paul found a way to, as he says in this verse, delight or find pleasure in those weaknesses. See, Paul understood that his failures and struggles weren't liabilities, that they could actually help bring him closer to Jesus. And when Paul looked at his weaknesses, he saw opportunities for his faith to stretch and grow stronger. You might be excited now about stretching your faith and growing closer to Jesus, but at some point you'll feel like a failure. I do too. You'll make mistakes, you'll doubt, you'll ask questions, you'll lose passion and focus. And it happens to me too. And when you do, remember that God isn't surprised by your failure. Your failure is just a part of the stretch. Failure will happen, but failure doesn't have to be the end of your story. When you fail, you have two choices. You can let shame and frustration and hopelessness prevent you from trying again, or you can let God use your failure to stretch you and make your faith grow stronger. Next time you fail, whether it's next week or in the next 5 minutes, I hope that you choose to keep moving forward and to keep stretching through your failures. Because God knows how to turn a failure into a stretch. Keep that in mind as I share these 3 pieces of advice about how you can turn a failure into a stretch. Number 1, before you fail, get a community. Now, lucky for you, you're in one, right? Elevate. Do it now. Get involved before you're stumbling. Surround yourself with people who want to see you succeed and be the kind of person who helps others through their failures. Ask someone, maybe your small group leader or someone else in your small group, to hold you accountable. Reach out for help from others when it's hard to keep moving. Don't be afraid to be honest and vulnerable, because it's the best way to get the help you need. When you fail, fall on Jesus. That's the second thing that Paul knew. Paul knew that only Jesus could rescue him from himself, and the same is true for you and me. When you fail, fall on Jesus. He won't be angry or disappointed or even surprised. He knows exactly who you are and how you struggle, and he loves you anyway. And the third piece of advice is, when you fail, get back up. Don't let failure or the fear of failure paralyze you. There is more to your story than your latest or greatest failure. God is always ready to forgive and use us despite our failures.